Hello and welcome to this special Christmas episode of Mind the Gap, making education work across the globe with me, Tom Sherrington, and Emma Turner. Hello, Emma.
Oh, hello, Tom. Are you feeling festive?
I'm feeling festive. The Christmas tree is up and it's Christmas in a few days and I haven't done any work for a couple of days, so yes.
Oh, you look so relaxed, actually. You do look like a man who has had a couple of days off.
Well, it's Christmas, and the advantage of being a freelancer is that you can put giant blocks in your diary and say don't do any work on these days, and that is the bonus. So I know that I live with somebody who has experience everyone else has of crawling through to the end of term, and it feels like a long term and it's been a tough one. So well done to everyone out there who's had a grueling term. You made it to the end. And well done. It's really exciting. And I've had the privilege of, I've lost track actually. I started counting and I lost count at 100. I've seen at least 100 teachers teach this term. Wow. And that is a real privilege. It's just such an amazing thing to see and to be part of that. So how about you? How's your term been?
Varied. Let's put it I've been like you, kind of doing my day job, my normal job with my trust, and then kind of all over the country seeing everybody in all sorts of different phases, different stages for different reasons, lots of curriculum work, lots of school improvement work. So yeah, it's been an absolute joy to get into so many different schools and to see what the sector's up to, and to see all the brilliant work that's going on. But yeah, I'm kind of crawling to the end of term now. I am ready to stop, very much so.
No, we did have some excitement this year with our own podcast. I think we were kind of surprised that to discover that people actually listen to it. So as well as the amazing guests, I mean, we've had some absolutely stunning guests, and I think our peak episode was with Sam Strickland talking about behaviour back in August. But partly because of that, but lots of other episodes, we've been hitting sort of 1,800 listens per episode. And then on the Spotify playlist, so it's just the Spotify version, we got our sort of annual thing, which told us extraordinary news, didn't it? Including
really
that Mind the Gap has been listened to in 56 countries, I think. 56 countries, which is amazing. So if you're out there in the country, amazing. And Sean, our producer, tells us we have had 93,881 total listens, which is
unbelievable.
Nearly 100,000.
I must tell you that, Tom. I was talking to my brother tonight and he said, "What are you doing tonight, Em?" And I said, "I'm recording the podcast." And he went, "What's that?" I said, "Well, the podcast that I do with Tom." And he went, "What's that then?" And I told him about the Spotify stats and he went, "Well, I didn't even know you did one." Bang, straight back down to earth then by talking to my brother.
Well, exactly. But it's exciting, and as well as the countries, it's what we're really pleased with is that Spotify measures what often your podcast is shared to other people, and something like a certain percentage of our listeners share it to someone else, and that percentage of sharing is in the top 5% of sharing on Spotify podcasts. So thank you for sharing our podcast and passing it on to other people. That's really heartening. But really it's possible because of the guests. So the guest list this year has been stunning, and some of the episodes, when you play them back, it's so interesting to hear people, and you can see them all on our playlist. But today is a different type of episode, so we occasionally enjoy just talking to each other. And one of our new types of episode is a head-to-head where we ask each other questions, and we enjoy that because it's like sparring. None of us know what we're going to ask the other until it comes, which is I enjoy. But this episode we're going to do like a Santa sack. We are going to open up the gifts and tell the world what we think are special things that we have found this year as a kind of wrap up. So
12 days, like 12 days of Christmas.
We'll see if we get to 12. If we'd been really clever about this, we would have counted and we'd had 12 each or something, but we didn't. So we're just going to take our chances.
I'll keep a tally. See how far we get. But I suppose we're going to kick off then. So
whose turn is it to take a present from under the tree first then?
You can have a go first. So what's your introductory, maybe it's your number one or maybe it's your introduction, thing that you've enjoyed working on or reading around or discovering this year then, Tom?
Okay, now I'm going to go for, this isn't in any particular order, to be honest, although I did write these in an order, so maybe that's the thing that I think, I was looking back over the year, one of the things that I think has really stuck out to me as like a feature of something that's gone, yeah, that's this year that I've been really getting into it. And I'm going to say Sarah Cottingham. Sarah Cottingham's blogs and over-practiced, and meeting Sarah for the first time at an event in London at a conference, which I'm going to also mention later. But I think so. She has been like absolutely superb to discover through her work on Twitter. So she starts doing these incredible threads of linking ideas together, really crisp, really succinct explanations of memory and learning. And she writes this epic blog called Overpracticed. So it's overpracticed at .wordpress.com. And she just writes these just absolutely brilliant blogs about memory and how it works, and really then codifying kind of the reason why specific things in your teaching might be influenced by the way we learn. And it's just so precise and clean as a writing style. So I just love it. And she's going to be writing an in-action book, well, she's partway writing it for next year, which is about the work of Alcibel on this whole idea of making meaning. So when you're how do your students make meaning in their own head from the material that you're presenting to them? And that's sort of really important piece of work, I think. So yeah, so that's my number one. It sort of, I wouldn't say that I hadn't heard of her or read her before this year, because I had, but this year she just was on fire with her blogs, just so many threads and blogs. And so I'd say she was had a bit of a stellar year, and so she's my number one.
I must admit, every time she posts something, I end up sending it to myself or bookmarking it or pinning it somewhere. Absolutely agree that the way that she can distill that information into such a succinct and clear way is absolutely fabulous. So well done, Sarah. Absolutely fantastic 2022 there.
Okay, so that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And I tried to promote this blog hashtag called #EdgyBlogShare. And Sarah is one of the people that also supports that. She often tweets things out and uses that. And I do think it's a useful thing to do. So if you do write a new blog, anyone out there, add in the tweet with your blog, #EdgyBlogShare. And then it's just an easy way. And people might not follow you on LinkedIn or Twitter or anything. And then if they don't follow you, they're never going to see it. But if you put in #EdgyBlogShare, people might search that hashtag, find your blog like me, and then I'll repost them and share them. And it's a good way. So Sarah's one of the people that supported doing that. Okay, come on then. Hit me with it, Emma. What's your number one choice?
Like two turtle doves, which is the second one, I've got two things that kind of go complementary, that go together. And there are two books that every primary school that I've been into this year, I've ended up referencing or mentioning or encouraging them to buy, because they are just brilliant at explaining what early years and key stage 1 could and should look like. They're absolutely brilliant. The first one is edited by Jane Waters Davies, and it's called Introduction to Play. And the other one has got the most seductive title ever. It's just the most lovely title. It's called Let Me Be 5. I just think it's the most beautiful title. It's called Let Me Be 5, Implementing a Play-Based Curriculum in Year 1 and Beyond, and it's by Sue Quirk and Victoria Pettit. I don't know how to pronounce her surname, but apologies, Victoria, if I've not said that correctly. But those two books I keep coming back to this year again and again and again, just really looking at how to make environments for our youngest learners in the system rich, challenging, exciting and wonderful places to be when you're little and you're learning. So those two books, Introduction to Play and Let Me Be 5. Somebody said the other day, actually, went into a corner, do you get commission for these books? I was like, absolutely not. No, I don't. But they're the ones I just keep coming back to, because exemplify exactly what should be in the environments for our youngest learners. And also, the Introduction to Play is one of the richest research books I've ever read. The amount of referencing in here is phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. So if you want a really kind of hard-hitting, rich book about early research into play, have a look at that one. And then if you work in year 1 or foundation, Let Me Be 5, you won't regret it. Absolutely fantastic books this year.
That's so funny. Now, one of my friends, and I won't tell you where she works because this might be controversial for her, but she sent me a message the other day and telling me what she's doing. She's responsible for the early years in an area of the country.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm still defending early years from Key Stage 1. Is that the way she phrased it? And you know what that means, don't you? I mean, that like over formalizing the learning in early years. And so this idea that she feels she needs to defend early years from Key Stage 1, I thought was interesting.
Well, rightly so, because it is a separate body all of its own. And as I write about it a lot, if you're taking year 1 into early years, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. Basically, the best way to prepare children for year 1 is a fantastic foundation stage curriculum. So I agree with you.
That title is genius because it packs everything into. I mean, you just know that you know the message, and you kind of want to read it, don't you? Let me be 5. Yeah. I feel like that's what I feel like saying.
Do you know what?
I want to have a go and have a play, but it's such an important thing. And watching early years in action is joyous.
Oh, this is in the little preface bit here. It says, "Let me be 5. I like to make a mess and take risks. I like the great outdoors. I'm an active learner. I like to work with my friends. I'm not ready to sit at a desk all day. I still need to play, explore, and be creative. Don't make me grow up too quickly." I absolutely love that. Let me be 5.
That's awesome. Every time I think of early years, I think of a school where I saw these kids with hard hats on, building this fantastic fort with blocks out in the playground, and it was just so. I just thought, man, this is proper. This is great.
Oh, it's magic.
Okay, top recommendation there. So these are, hopefully we'll get all these things in our show notes. Okay, so it's my turn now. I feel like
right. What have you got? Follow that.
I'm sort of trying to do a rich range of books, events, stuff like that. So I've been to lots of research ed events, and I could sort of talk about the ones I've been to myself, because I feel lucky I've been to a couple of really excellent events. But I'm thinking of like the actual sessions that I've been to, and I'm going to mention a couple. So the first session I just sticks out in all the ones I've been to this year was at Research Ed in London at Parliament Hill School in September. There's a really brilliant talk by Bradley Bush and Pippa Bush, who Bradley Bush, and they run the fantastic Inner Drive website. And it was fun seeing them like a husband and wife double act doing their session together. So that was quite cool in itself. Like thinking, how do you manage that? Because that's not everyone could do that. But the content was amazing. And the thing that really struck me was this: they were talking about the application of cognitive science to students with special needs in particular. And the thing that struck me is this: they use this phrase, "Don't blank slate them," or "don't," for a child saying, "Don't blank slate me." And I thought that was really, really powerful. So the whole sort of emphasis was, when you've got a child with special needs and you've got some processing difficulties, so many things are stacked against you in a lesson. Just the busyness of the screen, focusing your attention on a thing which is hard to focus your attention on, not knowing where, so needing time and direction for that. Memory overload, too many things being presented at once. Not knowing where to start, so constantly floundering at the first hurdle because you don't know how to begin, and not being given enough thinking time. They did this really good experiment where they showed you how long you've got to do a certain thinking task and how many seconds it took to process. And if you had cut off, if the task ends, how many of us hadn't finished yet because it was too quick for us. We could do it, but we couldn't do it in the time, and how frustrating that felt. So it was really good. But this idea of blank slating, and I thought that was such a clever idea, that it's demanding. Where do we begin? How do I get started? And obviously that leads to things like scaffolding and sentence starters and getting people going. Anyway, so to me, that was just a really good session where you think all of those, and their message was really clear that all of the things that come from cognitive science, and including, you know, the things that emanate from it, like Rosenshine's principles and stuff, totally apply to kids with special needs. But you need to then think about adapting them to be more timely, more scaffolded, more piece by piece. I thought it was excellent. So, and it was really good to see special needs explicitly talked about as a dedicated session in the conference. I mean, other people have done that as well, but it was a very good and excellent and standout session out of many that I've been to. There we go.
There you go, Bradley's book. Just off the top. Science of Learning. He does explain everything absolutely beautifully, and that is the book that I recommend to all of my early career cohorts as well, if you want to get ahead in terms of understanding all of the theories behind, well, not all of them, but many of them. In fact, 99 studies that you should know. Bradley does explain those beautifully in his book. So,
you know, when a phrase starts, like you learn a phrase. I found myself saying this many times since, sort of, don't blank slate them. And to me, it just means, it says a lot. And I think when you can pack an idea into a simple phrase like that, which means something, it helps ram it home.
Exactly. Well,
then let's hear yours. I picture you going up to the tree and selecting a present. So what are you going to give us?
Yeah, I've got this pile of things that I'm not going to do a book. I'm going to do a person who, again, is somebody I always signpost towards their work. This person does amazing work in collating and curating suggested sets of books for schools, for children to read, because there is such a wealth of reading material out there for teachers to pick from, especially in primary, where we don't have any set texts, or, you know, it's not linked to an exam. We can literally pick any book that's out there, and it can be a bit overwhelming. And this person does a brilliant job of pulling together really well curated reading lists for sorted by year group or genre or topic, or it just saves so much time for primary teachers. And that is Simon Smith, who's tweets at Smith SMM, and he's got his blog where he puts all of his books and reading things, and I must mention him about 3 or 4 times a week in all the schools I go into, because his work saves hours and hours and hours. And not only that, I just can't imagine how many children he's got reading as a result of having great books put in front of them, far beyond the reaches of his own school. So thank you, Simon. You have saved hours for colleagues across primary. So I just wanted to give a little bit of a thank you for the work that he does in promoting reading.
Oh, he's a total legend, and he's a total expert on all the the picture books, and he's just like his class, his office, his school is full of them. I love it. It celebrates that, and a healthy sort of like voice, I'd say, in the whole community of people like giving a different perspective and saying, okay, there's more than one way to think about how we do things. Totally, that's a superb shout.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so
right, what have you got? What's next?
Well, another thing for me, like, this was a really exciting project for me. So one of my favorite things that I've done, I want to celebrate, because it came out, we produced it last year as a labor of love, and this was working with Sufian Sadiq and Nadine Cotton from the Chiltern Learning Trust. And these are two people, they run the sort of teaching school there, and Nadine is part of the school improvement team there, I think. And Children Learning Trust is a brilliant trust. It's one of the trusts, I think. I don't want to big them up like massively, particularly for this compared to other people, but they are one of the trusts that really sort of, I think, shows what a good collaborative of schools can do. So if you're in a collective of schools, whether it's a local authority or a trust, they do it really well. In other words, they use their collective power to do something bigger than they could perhaps do at an individual school level. And they create a sort of community of practice around teaching and learning, which I think is exceptional. They did a lot of stuff in lockdown, some really good conferences. And so they invited me to do this really cool project, which was with the walkthrough.
Videos.
Yeah, it was just so great. And they got one of the schools in the trust, the middle school, to host well, they got some kids into a classroom, a sort of fake dummy classroom, because they had a camera crew, and they filmed lessons with 10 teachers doing a particular technique, like a particular walkthroughs technique that they had chosen, these 10 different techniques. And each of these teachers had been working on these techniques for a time, and they just tried to video them sort of showing how to do the technique as well as they could, in a step by step. And then I came in to watch and I only had a reasonably short time, but I was able to see the lessons on a sort of rough cut on an iPad, and then talk to the teachers and do a feedback conversation. I just found the whole thing really fascinating. So I thought it was so brave. There's so many great things about it. The teachers are so enthusiastic about it. When I met them, well, they were just buzzing, and they're really pleased to be involved. But then it was so interesting to me that you could watch a video and get a sense of what the teacher's trying to do and think, and have a really meaningful coaching conversation with them afterwards, and talk about that. That's interesting. All those things happened there, and what was happening here. And if you did it all again, where do you think you might have done it differently, or how do you think you might hone that practice again next time? So, and I just found that the dialogue with these people that I'd never met before was really lovely. And yeah, so we made these videos, and then, 2 cameras on for half an hour of teaching, to edit that down to 10 minutes is a lot of effort, a lot of editing. And they did 10 of them. So they took quite a few months to edit them, but they came out a couple of weeks ago. And so the Chiltern Learning Trust schools and the walkthrough schools have access to all of them, but one of them is freely available, we've put out. But to me, that was just a fab project with fab people. So Sufyan is amazing, and Nadine, both of them. So thank you to both of them for inviting me, but it was just a great project. But the main thing, I just loved the teachers. They were just they're so brave. To put yourself out there, knowing that hundreds and hundreds of people are going to watch you do this lesson. And it's pretty extraordinary. And I've shown the videos to a couple of conference sessions since, and it's really good. And teachers really appreciate their courage to sort of put themselves on the line in that way. So I thought that was great.
That is so wonderful of those teachers to do that as well. That's genuinely professional altruism. That is, to just say, this isn't about me. This is about actually sharing really great approaches to professional development. So that's absolutely wonderful. What a brilliant thing to do for those staff. So thank you. That again, they'll have reach beyond their own classroom like they could never have imagined. So what a brilliant thing to do.
Amazing.
Absolutely fantastic. Right, am I next?
Yeah, okay.
Right. My book of the year
Let's
is
hear it.
Sam Strickland.
No way. He'll never stop going on about it.
No, I just, again,
We'll never hear the last of it. Come on, what is it? Tell everybody. You're holding up to the screen.
It can't be in the most listened to episode of the year and then not be in the countdown of best things. So the behaviour manual, Sam Strickland, Educator's Guidebook, again, one of those books, whenever I'm working with colleagues, I seem to just kind of come back to it again and again. So concise, so useful, written in a way you can pick it up, put it down, pick out those particular strategies to work on or think about as a team. Can be accessed as an individual or used as a tool for developing whole school approaches. So just an absolute brilliant book for behaviour and culture. So congratulations, Sam. It has landed beautifully. Thanks for coming on. And it's been an absolute godsend for so many teachers that I've worked with. So thank you.
Yeah, I think you'll be pleased about that. It is good. And I think there's room for lots of, different voices in the space of behaviour management. We've had Tom Bennett on, and Sam and Tom Bennett overlap in many respects in the messages they give, but they don't give it in exactly the same way. And I think there's subtlety in there, and I think that's good. I think it's really exciting. So in fact, breaking news, I can tell you guys, this is the first time I've told this to people that are coming. This will be released in January. We are doing in May next year, May 2023, pastoral masterclasses. So we've had curricular masterclasses, and this was Sam's idea. And we have got, I'm just looking it up now so that I get the full lineup correct. But we have got an absolutely awesome lineup for pastoral masterclasses coming next year. Credit to Sam because it was his idea. But then I did all the kind of fixing of who's doing it. So we have got Sam, Jeffrey Boitier, who's going to do another brainstormer about his whole take on, bringing yourself fully to the party as a teacher. Mark Roberts is going to do a thing about boys. And Frances Akinde, who we've had on before, she's going to talk about special needs. So she was an incredible guest.
She's on my list. She was one of the people I was going to mention.
Well, we can go back to her. Sonia Thompson is going to do a thing about an ethic of excellence. Sufyan Sadiq is going to talk, like we've mentioned already, a thing about inclusion, high achievement through inclusion. I'm going to do a session which is basically a big up for Bill Rogers. And then finally, Amy Forrester, who's written a superb book about being a pastoral leader this year. So it's going to be great. So there's 8 of us doing a full 70-minute masterclass. So people who sometimes, we do a lot of work for curriculum leaders and stuff, but so a masterclass is really for people, anyone connected to behaviour, pastoral work, and any teacher really. That's going to be in May. So
that was genuinely not a tee up for that, but that worked really well.
Yeah, I know, it's great. They're all fair play to Sam. I mean, he had a great idea, and I asked all these people, do you fancy doing it? And they went, oh, please, yeah. So it was an easy one. And the hardest person to get to pin down was Jeffrey Boitier, because he's turning into a kind of a bit of a rock star. He does a sort of radio show with Keris Matthews, and he's writing all his books and going to book festivals, and as well as being a teacher. But he finally said no, he could commit. So I'm now ready to launch. Yeah,
wonderful. So does that count as your next thing, or are you having another thing?
I'm going to have another thing, because that wasn't even it. That was part of yours.
That wasn't a thing. Right, do your thing then.
Okay, so another thing, and I'm sort of trying to showcase a range of different activities here. So another just brilliant thing this year was the Step Lab conference in July at Oasis Academy in South Bank in London, which was arranged by Peps McRae, who we have had on this program. I say program, on our podcast, and and Josh Goodridge, and also Emma McRae and other people from their trust. So basically, Josh Goodridge and Peps McRae, who are really, they both work together across Ambition Institute, but also Step Lab itself. And as developing walkthroughs as a toolkit for teaching, and they're developing theirs. We've had lots of really interesting conversations about what they're doing and what versus what we're doing. In fact, recently we talked about some kind of collaboration, which we're still in its early discussions. But the Step Lab conference was awesome. It was a conference focused on coaching, a whole day about coaching, and there were so many sessions. It was amazing how many people there were and how many sessions to go to, and you couldn't go to them all. And we were in my session, I was talking about team coaching, but I saw some really interesting presentations about how people can use the platform and action steps within a whole school context, and the nature of a coaching process and getting the spirit of it right, working with individual teachers of different types, at the same time as having this idea of steps being a useful lever for improving your practice, but who decides the steps and their mindset around the steps and committing to it over time. You can't just tell people to do stuff, they've got to come to it. So you've got to get their goals sorted out and their motivation. And there's so many layers and layers of it. So for me, to have this ball rolling of, rather than coaching being like a thread and here and there in some of the research ed conferences, it was just totally dedicated to it the whole day. And I think that type of event hopefully will do more, I guess. But yeah, so that was really brilliant idea. Great to be involved in it. And some of the people that I had talk on that day, it was stunning.
Because coaching really is having a bit of a moment, isn't it, at the moment? It really, everywhere I go, it's kind of front and center in every single conversation. And I think that an event like that, where it does pull together all of those different facets of it, all of the big considerations, is so useful. And it's so weird to hear you say Step Lab, because I've been into 3 different schools in the last couple of weeks. All of them mention Step Lab. So the reach of it is absolutely huge, isn't it? Absolutely huge.
Yeah. So, you know, and it's the way people use it and how they use it. So what we talked about with them just recently was how, you know, what different things do different things. So walkthroughs, out my work that through walkthroughs has one type of, it's about more focused in a way around training whole bodies of teachers, like a CPD tool for like running sessions with everybody. And they were saying, no, they're very sort of totally razor focused on coaching one-to-one people in a one-to-one setting. So I think that's really quite interesting that, you know, and those things coexist, don't they? So in a school, you've got the need to train everyone and team meetings to run well and PD to be done well at a team level. But then coaching individuals is sort of supporting that. And it's the way those two things interface, which is where we feel we've got kind of some collaborative work to do. So to me, that was just, it was great. And it's lovely to you know, the enthusiasm they have. There's something about a whole bunch of people turning up on a Saturday to talk nerdily about coaching. Just right up the street. It was like, yeah, that is my kind of event. It was great.
Oh, I've got visions of you all being like the education corner men. Like, come on.
But it's powerful stuff, you know. I mean, there are lots of different attitudes to coaching, but the main thing is it's really about focusing on an individual teacher, and if that's the direction we're going in our profession, where teachers being valued and developed as people is front and center rather than kind of like a bonus if you're lucky. It's right at the core.
Yeah,
I think it's pretty powerful.
Wow, fantastic. Right, so I don't know what to do next. Yeah. I don't know which bit to do next.
So many.
There are so many. Right, I'm going to do not one that I can hold. I'll keep that one for a minute. Right, I'm going to mention something that's been uber successful this year with you and Mr. Goodwin, the 5 ways.
Oh, thank you for mentioning it.
Isn't it like the most downloaded thing ever?
I don't know about that, because there probably a few things could lay claim to that, but I wonder if I can turn and show a couple of those creations. I think they'd just be pouring out of my office here, but they don't seem to be. Oh, here we go.
You should have been wallpapered in your study. There you go.
Yeah, look, check it out. I've got the 5 ways, and David made this. It's beautiful.
It's absolutely phenomenal. I like you say, the codification of those key things in there is so useful. And I've seen so many tweets of people who have now virtually wallpapered their staff room with that, or it's formed the core offer of their professional development for the next term. I must tell you though, Tom, that every time I see it, I have a little wry smile to myself, because 5 Ways was the name of the very dodgy nightclub that we all used to go to when we first started going out. If you live in Leicestershire, 5 Ways it's something else entirely.
Oh, you've studied my beautiful product now. That's just
because, like the nightclub where I had many happy times, Tom, your 5 Ways is now where I have many happy times. Oh, well, there's a thread running through there.
Water with that. But it was amazing. This is what I love about this sort of the world of. I mean, I've met David a couple of times at a couple of events, but you know, he's someone who's like creating an energy around doing some work, like designing and one-pagers and working with Oliver, and because he's interested and enthusiastic. So I thought, I've done these blogs, you know, and I bang these ideas out. I hope they're useful, and I just thought of the 5 things. But then I thought I know that people like everything to be even shorter. And I was thinking he was getting a bit wordy, maybe. So I said to him, do you fancy having a look at them and doing them? And he just said, God, yeah. So he just took to them. And then each one of them was like, oh my God, look at that. They just got, I wouldn't say they got better and better because they're all good, but they just, so many interesting variations on the theme. So yeah, and then we made it into a booklet. Yeah, over 40,000 downloads of a PDF. And it is amazing. It's just, I mean, literally somebody contacted me to saying the way that one of the ones about reading had changed the way he teaches. And you think, well, that's pretty cool. Simply, instead of presenting on a PowerPoint slide, give them something to read instead. It sounds so radical, but it's not, is it?
I think it's so important to have that clarity and to have that simplicity there, because there is so much information that teachers have to process all of the time, that having it distilled into those one pages, into that kind of really clear, concise, organized format is just such a relief and so useful for everybody. And David's magic touch with his kind of presentation and artistic flair and what have you. I worked with him recently on a project. I sent him some slides. I thought he was going to have some kind of cardiac event because of the layout. The awfulness of my slides, and he went, "Just leave it with me, Turner. I'll tidy them up for you. Don't worry."
That is funny.
But he's uber talented, a joy to work with, and very, very generous educator. So thank you, David, and thank you, Tom, as well, for those, because they are an absolute winner this year for so many people. Absolutely brilliant.
Well, that's really cool. So look, I mean, I've got quite a few things I want to share, and perhaps do a couple of quick ones. Another really cool thing, that a lot of things are linked to events. I don't know why, that just in my head they stick out, but they're also linked to blogs. So that these two are, I'm going to do two, otherwise we'll run out of time. So two things where they're a great publication linked to a really good presentation, and I'm going to do them both back to back. So one of them was by Mike Hobbis, which is at the Leicester Research Ed, Red Leicester as it's known.
Red Leicester? Oh, right.
She's
sorry, bit slow on the upside. I was just thinking, Leicester playing blue. So
Red Leicester Research Ed Leicester, Red Leicester, which is a terrific event. And Mike Hobbis gave this. He's someone who teaches, has taught psychology, but he's also a PhD, and he's been working at I think it's UCL. If I've got all these details wrong, I'm sorry. But he did this excellent presentation, and it's linked to a whole blog series about attention, and it was so interesting. So we had all this data about what distracts people, and a lot of people, you see them fussing on Twitter about having bare walls, and teaching in a kind of barren wasteland, because otherwise the kids might be distracted. But the truth, his data that he presented suggested that the thing which detracts children more than anything else is the other children. So I thought, to a large extent, to the point where unless you're dealing with the distraction of children to each other, whatever's on the walls makes no difference whatsoever. So don't even fuss about the walls if you've got allowing the children to be more distracting to each other. So that was one thing. But the main thing was about our sort of focusing on the right things and the cognitive load. It was so interesting. There's some experiments he did with us, and there's a blog which you're going to put in the show notes, which talks about how distractions can come up. And if we're really focused on something so much, distractions don't come into it, like we don't notice them. So the more intrinsically demanding, this is the key message, the more intrinsically demanding the work is, because it's challenging and engaging, demanding in the sense of takes up all your thinking and you're really thinking hard, distractions don't come into it. You're sort of immune to them because I don't notice them because I'm already maxed out. The negative side of that is that if you're distracted by something really nothing to do with the work, that is also true. So if I'm totally preoccupied with something totally off task and nothing to do with the work, I can be so busy thinking about that nonsense thing that I'm doing that the teacher talking at me and stuff makes no impact either. So this is so interesting, how we can max out our attention quite quickly with something. And the trick of a teacher is to make that the right material. And so that, anyway, I probably have done him no favors, because he does say in his blog, I think I'm supposed to at this point tell you what the solutions are. So let me have a go, because he explores the whole problem. It's brilliant. So Mike Hobbis, that's one. And the other one, similarly, brilliant presentation linked to a brilliant paper. Professor Coe at the Research Ed, in the National Research Ed in September, about leadership. And it's kind of hilarious sort of delivery style. He's very funny, very dry. And basically, he was in a kind of stand-up routine kind of way, basically saying, the research into leadership is such that there's not much we know about it that works. There's so many variables, and it's so hard to pin down exactly what it is that leaders do and why they make a difference that we don't really know that well. That's the truth. It's sort of, we want to believe things are true that aren't. Some of the studies, there's so many factors that you can't really say it was the leaders and what they did exactly then. It could be a number of other variables. So they've explored what is true and what isn't true about leadership. And there's a superb evidence-based education paper of School Environment and Leadership Review. It's absolutely superb. So the top sort of download for the, I mean, if you're a school leader, if you haven't read the Great Teaching Toolkit, School Environment and Leadership Evidence Review, it's fantastic. It's a little bit more hopeful than I suggested, but it is sort of a bit of a bubble burster in terms of what we know. There's a long way to go with finding out what we know, but it's excellent. So those are my two.
Wonderful. I read a lot of what Mike does. I love his contributions online, and he's somebody who I always seem to come back to again and again. Mike is superb. I've got time for one more.
Go for it.
One more. Now, the very first version of this book a long time ago, in its initial incarnation, was one that I, again, formed the basis of a lot of my teaching from years and years ago. And it has been all updated and reproduced, and lots of it rewritten and expanded upon for today. And it is Robin Alexander's A Dialogic Teaching Companion. It's absolutely beautiful. And it is so full of notes already. It's just delicious. If you've got any interest in developing talk and questioning and classroom culture and how you actually extrapolate fantastic thinking from children, that one, Professor Robin Alexander's A Dialogic Teaching Companion, it superseded everything he's done before. And he says himself in there that his work now, this is the work now. It's been added to. So if you are at all interested in dialogic teaching, in talk, in questioning, on anything about developing thinking in your classroom, we're Happy New Year if you buy that. Happy New Year.
That's so interesting, because I mean, I remember when I first went to I got a job as a head, my first headship in the UK in 2008. The English department there, for example, were raving about Robin Alexander, and this whole thing of the dialogic classroom was a really, so it's brilliant. They thought, updated, it's continuing, it's a really important thing. And I think, sort of the power of talk, what it leads to, how it's a precursor for writing, helps you form ideas. And
honestly, if you love teaching, that's the one. That's your 2023 early read finished. And have you not read it yet, Tom?
No, I have. It's on here. I've wasted everyone's time. Look, excuse me.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, sorry,
isn't it beautiful though? Absolutely beautiful. I love it.
It's brilliant. And yet, what's just so amazing to me is that, well, it's not amazing because it's why it happens, but I go to schools where people are working hard always, and so it's just a struggle they have amongst many others sometimes. Some lessons you go to, and it's just not a thing that that the teacher's expecting the children to talk. It's like, listen, a couple of people answer, write it down, and there's a sense that it's kind of okay for children to be sort of totally non-verbal the entire lesson, and just sort of get on with the work. And well, I can check if they're doing it, but you think, well, there's so much about dialogue. Adults, as soon as you're talking to adults, as soon as like running a CPD session, people want to talk. They're bursting to talk, share, to think, to exchange. It's so inherent. And in a classroom, you need to have really good techniques for getting everyone involved in talking, structuring the talk. And that book is full of beautiful ideas for how you run talk, probing questioning, dialogic questioning, getting students to flush their ideas out, build on them. It's excellent. And so, it's
just that basic premise as well, especially with younger children as well, to learn new vocabulary and to use new vocabulary and to really embed it in their understanding. They can't just hear it with their ears. They've got to they've got to feel it in their mouth. They've got to say it. They've got to use it. They've got to use it in multiple novel contexts. And if you're not talking, they're not going to retain the content necessarily. So yeah, that's definitely one, especially for primary as well, to revisit that one. You may have seen it before in its earlier incarnations, but definitely have a little look at the update.
Fantastic. Okay, well, I've got two more. I'm going to say mine. So I'm going to say two, and I think we'll have to finish then. So
then we're done. Yeah.
So big thing for me was this year. My sort of big hero moment this year was meeting Jim Knight. So I can't leave the year without saying I met Jim Knight at Research Ed, and it was a real honour. And he was such a lovely man. And so Jim Knight, so there are more books by Jim Knight on my shelf than by any other person, really or not. Well, that one isn't actually, but he's just amazing.
That pile.
I know. He's just a legend. And this is what's so interesting about this whole field of coaching. Like in the US, coaching has been a thing for a long time. And it's actually an interesting thing, I find. I'm going to characterize this probably slightly in a superficial way, but in England, in the UK, we've got this sort of culture of CPD, whole staff into teams, and a bit of coaching is developing. In the US, it feels like it's almost the other way around. Like you're more likely to find someone who's called a coach, who teaches a coach, and the whole PD above that for the whole staff is weaker. So the people who are lucky to get a coach are getting coached, but not everybody has. And so there are conferences in the US just about coaching for coaches, and Jim Knight is at the center of that, has been for like 25 years. So he's a legend of coaching, and so to meet him and talk to him was really exciting. And then we have done a reciprocal book kind of thing. So he is writing it's coming out soon, the UK edition of this book. So Instructional Coaching, the definitive guide.
I've got that.
There's going to be a British version, a UK version, I should say, coming out next year. And he asked me to write the foreword for it. So I'm like super chuffed about that. And Jim is going to write, we are doing a US edition of the walkthroughs. And he is...
Have you broken America, Tom? Have you broken the US?
Not yet. But Jim, I mean, he's just so great. So he has this very, I mean, this is so interesting, like talking to Josh Goodridge and, for example, him about Step Lab and their approach. Jim Knight's approach to coaching is slightly different. Like Josh's approach is very much about steps and being really clear about them. And I think there's a lot in that, and a lot of our stuff on walkthroughs is on that. But Jim is much more holistic and build it from the teacher's perspective, and it's a fidelity to techniques. But I actually think there's value in both of those approaches, and it depends on the circumstances. But Jim's great thing is he just puts the coach themselves right at the core of it. Like he has this great love for the people who are coaching and supporting them to develop as people, and he writes beautifully about that in his books. And so it was for me, that was meeting him was just A1 highlight of the year.
Oh, that's just such a joy. And there's a little video that he's done on one of his websites that I must have used.
You're looking for behind you. What's behind you? You've got some.
I'm trying to find that instructional coaching book because I've got it as well, but I can't remember where I put it on my shelf. But I was saying there's a little video of Jim's that I must have watched with so many teachers a million times, that absolutely sitting in like a white room with a load of books behind him. And it's absolutely wonderful. But I must just tell you about Jim Knight, because I've got a bit of I don't know whether I've kind of miswired it in my brain, but every time I go to say Jim Knight, do you know what I say? Jim Kerr. You've introduced him as Jim Kerr, the lead singer of Simple Minds. Absolutely no idea why. I have to write it down.
So we've got I've got my 5 Ways book being studied by the nightclub scene in Leicester, and now my total hero, Jim Knight, is being associated with.
No, I accidentally called him the wrong name once when I introduced him on a course. I accidentally said Jim Kerr instead of Jim Knight. But now every time I go to say Jim Knight, I double check myself, and then I can't remember which one it is.
Well, we're going to be losing people on that person.
Right. Okay.
Because literally the worst concert I've been to in the last 10 years was this year, which was Simple Minds. It's absolutely appalling. So there we go.
Oh
So
my
anyway,
goodness. So you've
I've got
broken
one
America with Gym Night. That's amazing.
No,
Absolutely brilliant.
But the last thing I want to say, and this is about you, is that the last thing that I want to say, which is I just thought was a real thrill, is Emma Turner's fans in Australia and the US. And this is straight up. I mean, it's just great. In both of my visits there this year, I had people coming up to me saying, "Oh, I love your podcast. Isn't Emma fantastic?" And it's really great. I think that was awesome. This woman was telling me she lives in Brisbane and drives to work and listens to the podcast and thinks you're amazing. So,
oh, good. I've gone as pink as my jumper now, Tom.
While we're here talking about you know, the stuff the really heavy hitting stuff about Gym Night conjuring up an image of a faded Scottish rock star. People are listening to that. That's not the stuff they come for, though, I know.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you. That's very kind.
I think it's amazing and it's great. It's fun on this. We're still going with this. So let's just say a massive thank you to everyone involved with this show. It's been a really fantastic year. We've had a blast. Fantastic work by Sean Ryan, our amazing producer, from Mind Rocket Media, and the work they do for us is sensational. And we know that we are now going through to next year, which is really exciting. So we're all signed up to carry on. We've got some really exciting guests coming up in the new year and through. So looking forward to that. But just to say, like you can see, we could have carried on with so many things that are exciting in our world and our profession. And what we like to shine a light on is some of that. And it's just because of so many amazing people out there in the education world doing amazing things that we're able to share them. And we're lucky to be in that position. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who's been on our podcast and that has doing the work, which we then get the chance to celebrate. So big thanks from me. Lots of love to everybody.
I just wanted to finish by saying thank you to everybody who is based out there in schools, who's just doing fantastic work for all of our children and young people out there. It's an absolute privilege when I do go into schools to see what people are doing, and it's just thank you. It's been a tough term this year, and there's still people finding the magic and the joy in the job. So thank you for everything that you do for all the children and young people out there. So thank you. Happy Christmas. Have a lovely 2023.
Yeah, see you in the new year, folks. So this has been Mind the Gap with me, Tom Sherrington, and Emma Turner, and we'll see you in 2023.